So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us in this gathering tonight to talk a little bit about how to community engagement and what kind of strategies artists and cultural institutions and creatives have developed to engage with communities and with each other. This is also a very special gathering for us because it kind of marks the first year of the Goethe-Institut being here in this space in MacArthur Park, Westlake. It's been such an amazing journey for us, connecting to the community around us. And one of the ways in which we did that was it actually started with the Levitt Pavilion, who some of you might know. About 3 or 4 years ago, we were invited to sit on their neighborhood advisory council. So we've been going there and kind of listening to what people were busy with, not just cultural institutions, also services for people experiencing homelessness, immigration services. People talked a lot about trauma, about connecting to LA, about their different cultures. And then we started to ask at some point what people would want a Goethe-Institut, a German cultural center in this area to be. Like what what would you like to do with it? So, and then we did a few focus groups, and what came out of it was that people said that they wanted to use the space as their own to show their works and their cultures, which sometimes were not very visible in the LA cultural landscape. And then we had some partners and some people who helped us develop this call for the Neighborhood Interpretive Center. And I'm very happy to have all these wonderful people with us today who were part of the Neighborhood Interpretive Center initiative. And I think a lot of them are doing really amazing work engaging with different communities here and in LA. So I want to introduce you very quickly, but I'm very happy that you then also introduce your own work, and Swenja will help with that. But across from me is Byron, who ran our kites project. We had these beautiful kites based on Mayan traditions in our space. And then you did also some workshops with youth and adults. And we also had some queer performance nights here, which were amazing. Then at the kind of culmination of the project on 1st of November, the kites were shown and flown in and around MacArthur Park. Then we have Pauletta, who's sitting with 2 collaborators. Pauletta is doing really amazing work with youth and prevention. And she ran a workshop here for 8 weeks that culminated in a beautiful showing. And she worked with a lot of artists in the area, which was very interesting for us to discover. And she was connected to the Homies Unidos project. So thank you for coming to be with us today. I think your work is remarkable because you've been so long in this area. You do so much grassroots work for the community. And we were particularly connected to the youth program, which Frida runs, that then ended up connecting to a lot of other projects that we did, which was very beautiful. And I let you talk about your work as well. And then we have the Frida Kahlo Theatre, 3 decades of work with especially the Latinx community, but everyone, and bringing Latinx theater to this community and to LA. And I learned that you're the only theater in LA that actually does the majority of their work in Spanish. And we had a beautiful set here. We had an exhibition, and you showed works, Frida Kahlo, but some of your other very important works, and connected to the audiences and discussions. And there was always great food when you were here. So we miss you. And then the fifth project, Robin, she's unfortunately sick. She cannot join us today. They did a sound installation project, Voices in the Water, which connected people in this area and water in this area, and it was very gorgeous. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Swenja, who came to us through our cooperation for this project, but also for tonight. And I would like to introduce Benno really quickly, who's the program director of the Thomas Mann House, who's helping us with the event and this cooperation today. So thank you very much for that. And the Thomas Mann House is a residency space, and Swenja is a fellow, and she will introduce herself and help us through this evening, and she researches on community engagement.
Thank you so much for your nice words, and I'm very excited to be here and to learn more about your work. And I was asked to introduce myself and to present our project, our research project as Thomas Mann Fellows at the moment. So my name is Swenja Zaremba. I'm co-head of the Anna Lindh Foundation in Germany, which is a network of networks of civil society organizations who are active in the European and Mediterranean area. And currently I'm fellow at the Thomas Mann House together with my colleague Rubina Zern, who will also join us as soon as her Uber arrives, I hope. And we are exploring different attempts of participatory approaches, and I'm particularly interested in the role that arts and culture can play in this regard. The project that we designed somehow derived from the very common observation these days that the world is in trouble and we lack solutions to solve all the major challenges that threaten our societies these days. And at the same time, there are so many solutions being put into practice on the grassroots level. This democracy in action, as we call it, on a community level is in many cases very promising of how people live together, make their neighborhoods more inclusive, foster solidarity, raise awareness for voices that are generally not heard, and address things that really need to change. And we were wondering what would be needed to transfer those positive examples, those activities that are created by civil society and that have already been proven to be successful, that indeed can solve some of today's challenges, at least I believe it, but nevertheless stay very small. What would they need from government, from municipalities, from us as a society, from institutions like Goethe-Institut, to be scaled up or to be transferred and to be adapted to other contexts to make real change happen, and maybe on an even bigger level as it is needed. So we are interested in learning more on how to organize communities on a local level and how to transfer the key learnings. To this end, during our fellowship, we are conducting interviews with people from the field, with activists, with with artists, foundations, and with community organizers, but also with people from local authorities. And that's also the reason for being here today. We want to learn from you as the activists and practitioners who were involved in this in this pilot here at Goethe-Institut at the Neighborhood Center, and also from all the others from the audience, and because Lian and I, we want to invite you to also participate in this discussion, how to community engagement. So a warm welcome also from my side. And let's get started with our first task. We want to learn more about your work, but we want to get it started by those associative pictures, and we would like to ask all of the people who were involved last year to pick one of these pictures which, in your opinion, describes your work best, and then explain to us why you picked this picture and maybe explain a bit more, elaborate a bit more on your work. You can just stand up and walk around, and so that you can better see those pictures.
Hola. Sorry.
So we have a couple microphones going around. I think there's one over there and there's one over there, and there's one here. So I give it to Ruben.
Okay, I chose this. There's no explanation, title, author, nothing. But I like because of the fire. There's some figures that kind of masks, stones, earthy, but especially the fire. That's that somehow I connect to it, the work we do, trying to keep our history, our traditions, but at the same time, trying to move forward, find new ways, new connections, and in the fire that you need as an artist, as a human being, to keep moving. So.
And how does it connect to the Frida Kahlo?
Like I said, it connects to me. So, no, it's just like I said, these figures seem to be like masks. So, mask theater, very earthy, very. That's the type of work we do, and especially the fire, the we like the masks. Also, always we've done a lot of historic plays and things about identity, but at the same time we always try to move forward to be to find new ways to communicate, to connect with people, and so that's why it attracted me, this image.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Fred, use your mic. Take your mic.
Uh, so, um, so I chose this photo right here. It shows a fist breaking through glass, right? And I feel like this really projects the type of work I do at Homies Unidos. To me, this means that somebody has to break through glass, break through your everyday labels, right? That are put on us. Sometimes we're going through some stuff, and we have to break that ice. And I feel like this image right here symbolizes power, strength, and overcoming obstacles, right? Sometimes there's like walls and boulders that we have to, shatter, right? And I feel like, most of our, kids that we work with at Homies Unidos have to break that identity that they have set themselves, or put.
Growing up, right, we're already labeled things in our environment, and we have to break through that, right? So uh, our past is not going to define who we are, or where we're going, who we are destined to be. So that's what this image means to me.
Thank you. It's beautiful. I think there's one mic here, if we can move it over.
Hello, hello. Is it on? Okay. Hi, everyone. So, I first seen that image of the staircase, the spiral. I'm always attracted to circular things, but then I seen the dragons. So, the dragons. I had to pick the dragons because I'm biracial. I'm Black and Chinese. I present Black, but I grew up with my Asian family. So a lot of times I confuse people because I'll be just talking all this Asian stuff, and they're like, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" So I'm very connected to. This reminded me of myself and the way I was raised, and the Eastern approach, the Eastern way of looking at things in the Western world. And my program was, well, our program was called Vibing with Cultural Leaves. So I strongly feel that everyone's culture is what is going to heal people, you know. And so that's why I picked this, and that's why I picked the name, and Vibing with Cultural Leaves, and really just wanted to embrace different cultures. We made a cultural tree, and not just culture, but subcultures. There's a lot of beautiful subcultures here in MacArthur Park that we don't know about, you know, like the Radiotron and the hip hop. And there was a big punk scene here too that a lot of people don't know about, you know. Unfortunately, crack cocaine and now the fentanyl is what's kind of like stained MacArthur Park. But there's a lot of beautiful history here in MacArthur Park. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Byron. I chose this image because I think beyond the colors, I think it's also the geometric figure shapes and figures, and I think the kites reflect that. But I think beyond that, it's around like the layers and the complexity of both my work, right? So making these giant kite installations at the park, but as myself, like growing up down the street in K-Town, MacArthur Park border, and just like in LA and being exposed to different communities around, at least for me, has always been around like shared lived experiences, right? Whether that's immigrant folks, whether that's queer or trans folks, whether that's undocumented people, right? Or just people from all across the globe that now live in LA or reside here. So that's one of the reasons why I chose this. And then also for me, in terms of the community engagement for this year, I think, again, doing this kite installation at the park, just for, not by myself, right, with different organizations, but just around continue to do the work, which I think is reflected in all the other projects, right? Continue doing this different work time and time again in the area, in the park, with the community, with the youth. But at least for me, having the opportunity to have that being documented, right? Whether it's through film, through the footage, through having them exhibit here, right? Whereas they're still in the park, they're still like in the neighborhood, it's still accessible. And I think that helps in terms of like funding or resources in the future. And I think a lot of the work that I've seen growing up here for community-led efforts, right, it doesn't get documented. So folks don't know that it happens. So then other institutions, other entities get that funding. So this was a good opportunity for hopefully a lot of other projects as well to get documented as much as my work. So.
Thank you. Would you pass your mic to your colleague? So literally, I picked up this image after I thought about kind of reigniting fire and bringing back sort of these
art and events to MacArthur Park that are maybe went more underground before, or they just kind of disappeared, since a lot of people did get pushed out of this area that used to contribute to a more livelier cultural setting here in MacArthur Park, literally in this area. So part of the reason why I support Byron's work all the time is because I do think that it's part of reigniting past fires that folks try to put out here in LA when they don't want us here anymore, and they try to, like, you know, kick us out or just not appreciate us, right? So I think that's part of this work, is always reigniting that fire and not letting it be put out. And also it symbolizes, and I don't know if y'all will understand this term, but burnout, which is something that I have felt a lot. Growing up in LA and seeing a lot of the same shitty art. I'm just gonna say it that way. So it's time to, like, really give folks with talent the space and the support, and and let us be queers, and yes, let us be artistic and create shit. And if you like it, cool. If not, cool too. But don't try to turn it off. Don't try to make it disappear. Don't try to put out the fire, because that's impossible, first of all, and second of all, like, we have every right to express ourselves in the art form. What else? So, and then literally we light up, we build fires, and that's okay too. Like, if we want to burn some of LA down, let us do it. It's okay. We built this city, we can burn it down if we really want, first of all. And so if we do want to, like, protest with fire and through art and through, like, you know, the burning torch that can't ever be put out, like, people need to be okay with that and make way. So, and I'm just going to say it too, like, hipsters and the newcomers and the gentry that have moved into LA really need to be okay with us burning shit up and being fun with art and creating nice things that they can also appreciate. And so, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to give this back to you.
Should I go? Sure. I picked the image with the pencil and crumble paper and the notebook because I was working with Pauletta, part of Vibing with Cultural Leaves, and I was, like, in charge of the art. But it just reminded me of when I was working with youth. Well, whenever I work with anybody, like, they're always afraid of, they always want an eraser because they're always afraid of messing up. So it was really cool seeing the kids like afraid, but then out of nowhere I turn around, they're all flickering paint, which was really cool to see them, like, get really comfortable. And then it was, like, kind of like a freak out moment because I was afraid they were gonna like dirty up the whole place. But it was really nice seeing them just, like, find joy in art, and they found it themselves. They didn't need me to explain it to them, or, like, I gave them, like, instructions on how to do one thing, and they ended up doing something completely different. So that was, like, that's why I like art. So, and that's why I'm into art. So yeah, I like to give the least instruction possible and just lead people to find their joy in making something, because it should be fun, like, first and foremost. So it was really good seeing that, and yeah, to me that was amazing. And that's it. Thank you.
I selected this image because it just kind of looks like someone going on a journey, and I felt like the Vibing with Cultural Leaves program was a bit of a journey because after COVID, I just kind of became like a homebody, and I kind of didn't really want to be outside and to talk to people and have to deal with people again. But going to help my mom with Vibing with Cultural Leaves gave me, like, you know, something to do and helped me feel comfortable with being a person again instead of like sitting inside my room and not really doing anything. And then it also reminded me of the camping trip when we went to Wistoyo and when we got on the boat to go to the Santa Rosa Islands.
Okay, so I don't know if this works. I'm with the Frida, and I picked this one, the stairway, right? I really like how it has unity. You can go in either direction. You can spiral down into a central concept or spiral out into something diverse, an overused word. But I think what the Frida does is you can come in as whatever, you know, because it interests you. And the Frida has always been open to all different kinds of people. And that means language groups and generations and all variety of Latinx without even defining it, which is really nice, okay? So you can come in as a little piece of this railing, you know, and you have a place there. It's really cool because there's sort of this central core that is everybody. We don't get all like, okay, so what generation, what type of Spanish do you speak? No, everybody's welcome. And even if you're not this, you get to come here and be part of this stairway. So I guess you can look at it as we're all centralized and we're all as diverse and colorful as you can imagine, which isn't represented by the postcard, but imagine it. So that's kind of what it is for me.
I think I forgot. Can you repeat? We pick an image and it's connected to what we did. How did you get? Okay. So I picked this, the whatever you call this of the ship, simply because this, whatever it's called. I'm no sailor, as you can see. But it reminded me of being in troubled waters and navigating a ship or trying to right the ship so we didn't drown. As we know, the pandemic really pretty much shattered the theater scene here in Los Angeles. And we're not going to sugarcoat it. You know, the Frida was closed for 2.5 years. We barely opened in November, October, November. And so it was a hard-fought battle to get us to the other side, thanks to Ruben, thanks to his savvy. But it was difficult. And the fact that, you know, 35 years later, you know, it's still open and it's still here really resonates with me. So this is the image that resonated, you know. And the fact that we landed here at the Goethe, you know, even though we were closed and we were trying to figure out what's next, this event really just helped us, you know, believe in ourselves again. That, you know, we mattered, that our history mattered, and that, you know, we were going to survive and we were resilient and we got to the other side. So that's what it reminded me of.
Thank you. We were speaking about youth. We have 2 representatives of this age group here, or maybe a few more. But would you like to continue?
Okay, hi, my name is Katie. I come with Homies Unidos, and this is the picture that I chose. It's like some gifts, and it reminds me of the work that me and my sister do with them because I feel like they really do bless the community a lot, like with food and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that, and it's really nice of them to be doing that. And I'm really glad to experience that with them. I chose this image because it reminded me of working with Homies Unidos and helping out the community and working with the community.
Okay, thank you everybody for sharing. Benno wants to clap. So Swenja and I discussed a little bit how to go forward and like what kind of thread to use, and we delved a little bit in in their research, and her collaborator is here as well right now. They work with notions that certain words and thoughts about community engagement. So I'll hand it over to you to put that in.
Yeah. So Lian and we picked some of the topics that Rubina and I are working on in our research. And the first topic that we picked is trust. And what we want to know from you is, do you remember a particular moment or an encounter in which trust had an impact or played a crucial role during this last year, during your projects here at Goethe-Institut?
But not just at Goethe, maybe your work in general also.
I think that in working with the community, trust is one of the most important things in order to bring people on board. Respect is another one, right? If there's no respect for you, there won't be no trust. But I remember one time when I first started doing this work, and I had to really develop a strategy for the homies to trust white people coming into the neighborhood, because the only white people they saw were law enforcement and prosecutors and DAs and judges and prison guards. So for them to trust me that I were not gonna get them in harm's way with them was really difficult. I first had to trust the people that I was working with, and they were art facilitators, right? So they were bringing art and to a church that had granted us some space, but it wasn't easy. We had to get a lot of food available for them to come over, and we have to go and get them in their spot, right? Sometimes we even had to, like when we did a workshop on HIV and whatnot, right? And sometimes we went directly to the park that we're kicking it in, and we did the workshop in the bleachers, right? So yeah, that's how they at least that's my story around trust when I first started.
Hi everyone, I'm Allegra. I work with Levitt Pavilion Los Angeles. We do the free concerts at MacArthur Park. And Alex, I really appreciate what you brought up, because for me this is the thread of connectivity. Some of you know me, some of you don't. My first sort of like deep connection to this particular neighborhood, MacArthur Park, Westlake, was back in 2007 when Alex was crazy enough to hire me, or Sylvia at the time, to join the Homies Unidos team as a community organizer. And the organization that I currently work for came into the neighborhood at that point in time. And the leadership was white. And I was like, I'm gonna get on this community advisory council because I need to see what's up with them. I need to see their intentions. And 12 years later, I'm now a staff member at that organization. And in a lot of ways, because of the positionality and the privilege that I have and hold in this type of a role, it enabled me to serve as a conduit for some of the groups that were part of this cycle, really being intentional about who I'm reaching out to. And I think that trust comes in terms of like having a long-term commitment and continuing to show up. I've had the blessing to work in, Boyle Heights, South Central, but MacArthur Park, Westlake is something very near and dear to my heart, and Pico Union. And when people know you and they know what you're about and you stick to your values and you build in a good way with a good heart, that's when people trust you. And what I've been able to watch in this lifetime.
I have a trust story. I'm from LA. I live in the neighborhood. I'm active with Goethe-Institut. And when I first returned to LA after being away, it was the moment when AIDS had just broken out and people didn't know what it was. And someone said, why don't you volunteer for APLA? And so I did, and I knew nobody. I wasn't a part of the gay community at all, but I felt I wanted to do something to integrate into Los Angeles, and that was a good way. So the first thing we all did, none of us knew each other, was we took trust walks with people that we didn't know. So I closed my eyes, and Thomas Castaneda took me around to whatever obstacles or whatever, and we're still friends. This was so long ago, but we're still friends because that trust was just built up there. And we all became so trusting of each other, and we were all so scared about what this unknown thing was. So, thank you.
I was just gonna say, yeah, definitely building off of what Alex and Allegra have shared. Yeah, it's a lot of work. If you really want to include people, it's a lot of fucking work, right? And a lot of institutions, people say like, oh yeah, it's open, right? And it's like, okay, sure, but right. And so even if where there's the application process, but even beyond that, right? I think for me, it was around like, well, who is involved, right? Like who is it? Like what's the process? As opposed to just being like, oh, we did an open call and like, see, no one applied, right? Like you wanted us to open it to the community, and we did. And see, like there were no proposals. So I think when there's definitely continue doing that work, and at least for myself, right, like being able to have the trust to, if not know all the different projects, right, like I've been doing performance art, a part of the work that I do. We did one in Frida Kahlo Q Team in like 2006, 2005, like a very long time ago. And I worked when I was a youth organizer or a young person with Homies Unidos through different youth collective, through Allegra and other folks. And you working with young people, right? So being able to, that trust that we all know each other and be able to collaborate, because a lot of the projects, they collaborate in one sense or the other. I think beyond being based out of the park, right, out of this neighborhood, is about like showing that all these different groups have been doing that work, right? And then knowing that when you do want to make sure that it's inclusive, there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that it actually reflects that, as opposed to just saying it.
Well, just like Minerva said earlier, we were closed for 30 months, which was extremely hard for us. But we've been working together for a long time. In the case with Lian, I mean, we've been working for over 30 years. Minerva, over 20 years. And so last year, we started working very much and trying to reopen, trying to rebirth. They say that I'm the leader. I don't consider myself a leader. I'm consider myself more like a facilitator. I get things like a long time ago we did a play about transgender person in the Colombian army. I didn't set up to hire a transgender actor. Simply it's just like, okay, I like the play. Let's cast. And this actor showed up and said, okay, let's do it. And somebody wants to come and do something at the Frida Kahlo Theatre. It's an interesting project. Okay, come in. That's what we're trying to do. And when we sit and write our grants or plays or whatever, I always leave them alone. I just come and check. Okay, I like this one, I don't like, or they come and ask me, what do you think about this? And that's how we work. It's not, I don't try to impose my ideas on anybody. I show him. If you like him, fine. If you don't like him, fine too. It's the same. You come and tell me your views, your ideas, and that's the respect you were talking about. I'm not be completely 100% in tune with that, but I respect that is your idea, what you're trying to say. And I think that's how we show the trust and respect when we're working together. Okay, I respect her trajectory, the time we were working together. She knows what the things I like. I know the things she likes. And so it is not about, let's talk about trust. We already do it time after time. All this past year, we've been planning not only the exhibit here at the Goethe, but also how to reopen, how to restart. Like Minerva said earlier, the theater scene in LA was decimated, especially the community theater. We used to have over 100 little theaters in LA. Right now, we don't have even 20. They're disappearing. And these little theaters were the groundwork, the schools for a lot of performance in LA, the way for you to showcase your work. And so it's, sorry, my alarm. It's been very, very hard for us to go back, trying to bring back the audience. We started with the classes. We used to have 20 to 24 in the adult class. We started with 5. Now we're up to 14. So little by little, people are coming back, but it's gonna take a long time. The same with the youth class and the animation class. We used to have 20 kids, 15, 20 kids. Now we have 10. And the photography class also is baby steps, but we've been working together for a long time. We've been in this community for 28 years. And hopefully, it's not hopefully, I know we'll be back to the same level. And I am so sorry, I have to go. I have a class every Tuesday. It's with adults, it's in Spanish, theater class. A bunch of people who, most of them wanted to study theater when they were kids, but because of their family, their circumstances, or the towns where they grew up, they couldn't, and now they're doing it. And I have students that are 70 years old. I have students that are 20, and I have one who's a dentist, one who works. You can find him every day here at Home Depot trying to find jobs. So it's a very, very different. I have a guy who used to be a university teacher, so different levels, and I love this class. So I try not to cancel it. And so tonight, thank you very much, everybody. I gotta run. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Can we get an applause for Ruben and his kick-ass work? So thank you very much. I think we heard a lot of really important notions. We heard about respect, you spoke about, showing up, time. It takes time. I liked also what I think both of you spoke about. You have to trust yourself first before you can create trust for others. I think that's very true and interesting. You talked about it being work. It's work. It's work. It's continuous work. So there's a thread in that. I don't know if you want to say something, Pauletta, because I feel like trust is so important in your preventative work as well.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. It was recommended that I fill out the proposal, which was the first time I ever done anything like that. I've never done anything like that, and I had to look this. I had to Google this institute shit up, and because I didn't trust, and the first brown person I saw was Joel, and I know his work, and then Allegra also too. I seen that she was involved, and so that made me feel comfortable. I actually work with different populations, different groups, and do different stuff just throughout the community, and so I think us all being connected, being from LA, played a big part of, taking that leap of faith and just writing the proposal and doing it. But in general, the work that I do, mostly facilitating groups and working with people, different ages. We don't actually see, we don't see them have an aha moment. They're actually not happy about being there. And so working in those conditions, I have to trust like what I'm doing is right, what I'm doing is coming from the heart. It's with good intention. And years have gone by, and former clients have come to me and said, you know what, I appreciate those groups that we did years ago. So that's what I pulled from, So doing the work that I do, I know that I just have to trust the process, and hopefully the sharing of information isn't something that they will need in life, but hopefully it will come to them and they'll remember it later on if they need it.
Thank you. I think we will come to our next topic, which is directly connected with what Byron just said about inclusiveness and about not leaving no one behind. Our next question is, how do you reach out to new audiences, to new people with whom you are working? How do you include and invite people in your work? And we called it Encounters, our topic. Is there anyone who wants to start?
All right. So how I understand these encounters. So as I was mentioning, when we were closed, even though we weren't doing live theater, we still did virtual. So the virtual world opened up a whole new set of possibilities, but us being theater people, we missed the live interaction, but, it opened up a creative new outlet for us. So we encountered a whole new possibility where we could have 99 people in our little theater, or we can have 100,000 people watch it. Not that we did, but it opened up other possibilities. So that new world was very exciting. It still is. We haven't finished exploring it. But to me, that was the encounter. In this, insane world, everything turned upside down. We got a little opportunity to do something creative outside, outside of the box, as they say, but also with new and wonderful imaginative possibilities.
I feel like with the word encounters, I feel like making an impact on a youth helps with meeting other people, right? So you first work on a kid, try to set some goals for him, try to identify what is the root cause of problems going on with him, and eventually helping the family as well. And slowly people start recognizing the work that you're doing, right? The family starts recognizing the individual, the changes they're making, and sometimes that individual themselves might be able to refer other clients, or the word spreads, right, of the work that you're making on this individual. So in the past, I've worked with kids who had different struggles, and those kids eventually referred their own siblings, family members, and that's the amazing part, right? Something else is going inside schools, working with other agencies, maybe children's services as well, making an impact in the community. So yeah, those are some of the ways that we make connections with others.
I'll add on to that. Besides the youth work that we do at Homies, which Daniela and Freddie are in charge of, we work in prisons. We work with people that have been convicted to life, and have immigration holds, and they'll be getting deported even if they are suitable for release. So one of the things that we wanted to do in regards to that was that we wanted to organize folks to advocate for criminal justice, right? Reform. And one of the things that we did was that during this pandemic, one of the things that we did was that we started taking food to the loved ones of all these people that were writing us, right? And that really put us in the momentum, right? That we were now getting calls, right, from other families that were in need, that had loved ones in prison. But also we ended up doing food distribution in the community, right? And we ended up using it as an outreach opportunities for to connect with those communities. But first, you needed to know the community, right? You needed to know what are their needs, right, in order to make that encounter, right? What are you bringing to the table, right? And with folks that are incarcerated, basically, it was like their freedom. You know, you're trying to bring their freedom. But the families out here, you needed to really look at what are their basic needs. And some of them were just the fact that they had never been in a group setting with other mothers that were going through the same things that they were going through was life changing, was healing, right? So we were able to. We were not being really successful with our community organizer that we had. He was good at connecting with people in prison, but not with the families. So we ended up hiring one of the family members, right? That was impacted, that had her son in prison, and she was amazing. She's brought over 40 families now, and we connect with them. She connects with them, and you know, she goes beyond, right? And that's how we've gotten so much response, right? That sometimes we feel that, you know, our work limit us to certain things, right? Or they give us a job description and, oh, this is the only thing that I'm gonna do. But sometimes that limits us into really having real impact. And the community organizer needs to do whatever it takes to really look at the community needs in order to bring folks in, right? And that's why our programs are growing, right? Because it's we're identifying also people that have been system impacted to take on the roles to address the needs that those people have that we want to recruit.
I was gonna say briefly that like growing up in LA, both like being politicized or being engaged in different community groups efforts or like organizing social justice spaces, right? As a organizer, as a part of that work, but also as someone that creates art, that has been like a creative person and just always wanting to like incorporate art into a lot of the work that I did. It was always very hard because people were all like, well, like you want to talk about like immigration, but you want to talk about like undocumented people. Like you want to talk about people in detention, we want to talk about like trans women in detention centers, right? Like, and then for me, when I started doing the kites, right? For me specifically, right, we were looking into one of the first ones that I created was for in memory of folks who've been killed by LAPD officers, right? So when I think about the way that we talk about like figures, statistics, right? And it was mainly because it was Black bodies, right? So for me, it was like, what are the narratives that we are not addressing or not talking about when we just like think about these things like, well, we can talk about it, but let's talk about it this way, like, or like art, for at least for me, growing up in LA, right? We're inside institutions, right? As opposed to me being like, well, I want to do an installation inside MacArthur Park, right? Like that has very clear political messages that create this disruption, but that more importantly, it is art, right? Because I've been able to do that work and I have that experience and be able to like present my work in that way, right? But the audience is the community in the park. So I think for me that's always important in terms of like the encounters and being able to challenge, right? Like how art can exist. And for me, beyond that, being able to collaborate genuinely with the community members as opposed to like an extractive relationship, right? Where it's just like, well, tell me about your experience so I can put it into my work. But really being about like, well, it's going to be very, very broad, but it's also going to be very, very specific for very intentional reasons. And yeah, like, you know, in my experience, because my work does not like appease, right, like whiteness, or does it like, you know, like makes it about like other things, I have a hard time being able to like, my artwork is political and it's like, I mean, political work is artwork, and there's going to be very complex and creative, but I think that trust of being able to collaborate with different people, or even here at that space for me to be like, well, I also do performances in the middle of the kites, right? So that.
I think it's interesting too, when just the idea of encountering, you know, how do you get audiences, which is a constant discussion that we have. And sometimes you just have to go out into some facet of the piece you're doing and go, oh, this talks about this. Let's go find those people, you know, because you might not do that. Well, and then the dialogue goes on. Well, they wouldn't be interested. They wouldn't want to come, you know, and you get so down this rabbit hole that says no to everything, you know, and maybe they would. So maybe one should just sort of clear one's head of expectations and say, I think that group would be cool. Why don't we just go talk to them without any stuff on it? And, you know, everyone's an adult. If they're not interested, they'll tell you. They'll say, oh, thanks, but we're not interested. That's cool, you know. But I think we put a lot on ourselves. And I say that as a performer. Oh, I'll call this person. Oh, but she'll be busy. She won't want to go. You know, why do we do that? I think just take all that stuff away, you know, and just go kind of in an open, positive way. Like, hi, why don't you come? You want to come? It'll be fun. You know, I don't know. I'm kind of the Pollyanna of the group, but a lot of times maybe there's somebody who would go and they don't know and nobody's invited them. We could be that person, right? We could be that person.
At the park, when Byron has done, I think I've only been able to go once because I work a lot on the weekends. At the park here, when I believe Byron started with workshops for kids to create the kites, and then maybe a handful of people worked on one and made it really, really big throughout the session. When I arrived, I just remember kind of seeing also common like park folk, you know, just looking from far away, but being a little bit too shy to come up, or thinking that it was not for them, because there simply is not a lot of those types of events at MacArthur Park. I remember Byron telling me like, yeah, we're just gonna go take over a space. Like, we have to just reclaim some of the park back. But I remember people looking and just waving to them like, come. And to me, that's a simple, super simple connection. Like just telling someone to come. When I first walked into the center, I noticed the blinds were shut down. And I was like, well, how do people know what's going on in here? So I think we opened them. You know, we put kites on the windows. Like the most simplest things can really make a big difference when you want to really connect with someone and have them participate in or come to your event, see your art. We literally wave people down, come right here, waving people from inside on purpose for them to just come and join and check it out. It can be pretty simple.
I want to thank you for mentioning that. To me, I think about this as like the art of invitation. You know, for Levitt LA, we've been programming in this neighborhood for 15 years, but there's also 100,000 people in this area. We are by no means done with our outreach. So any organization that is rooted in this area and wants to say they're part of the community, I'm pretty sure you have not knocked all these doors. I know I haven't. With that said, speaking to what Alex brought up, you know, something that I've been able to push for within this organization is for us to basically hire like outreach specialists. In other organizations I've been part of, there's health promotores. So this is a model that came from El Salvador in the 70s when rural health workers wanted to make sure that people had access to the information that they needed to save their lives. There's a number of organizations here in LA, Central City Neighborhood Partners, Esperanza Community Housing, that run programs where they train folks basically like how to offer health services, yet I hire those health promotores to help me with the outreach for the concerts. Why? Because they're trusted messengers, right? These are people that they're mostly senoras or queer folk who like have these long-standing relationships, and like I'll hand them like 5,000 flyers and bam, they're gone. That's so much more than what I could do. But it took a lot for the organization that I work with to like bring someone like me in and trust that this was going to happen. Another thing that Byron was bringing up, and I forget your comrade's name. Thank you. Yeah. Even though I met you a number of times, is the porosity, right? Like, are you inviting people as participants or are you inviting them as co-creators? You know, we do Radiotron. Radiotron's a hip hop youth center that was the origin space for a lot of cultural workers here in LA in the Westlake neighborhood in the 80s. And, you know, the person who started that had to really like push Levitt LA to do the right thing and like include it in their program. Because especially for performing arts organizations, you know, you're battling like, in a sense, legitimacy and being connected to the communities that you're part of. And not all performing arts organizations want to be porous in that way, where you're listening and looking at what's happening in this area as your inspiration. And I'm so glad, Minerva, that you brought up the virtual portion of it, because that enabled us to take things to a whole other level. Like for 2022, our audience was 50% virtual and 50% in person. So, you know, the notions of accessibility are going to continue to expand and shift.
So my name is Polo Munoz. I want to apologize. I came in late, but so I want to make sure that I at least say something so that people don't come in. Who's this dude, right? Because I can see that there's been trust built in the last hour, but the freeway was really packed. We've myself and another person, Jessica Just, we created this organization called Creating Creators. And it was really designed to bring in art into the classrooms through filmmaking. We've actually been doing an iteration of this for about 15 years. And one of the things that is critical is the connection that we have to make with both the community around the schools, because we work within the school system. One of the challenges that has always been there is to have the arts be legitimized as a tool for learning and as a tool for teaching. And so what we've been able to do in the last 15 years is we took filmmaking as a process, and we've actually broke it down in all of the standards, you know, how does it work with literacy. Today we just launched a project that we thought it was going to be one classroom at this district called Centralia Unified, which is an elementary school district. And then they sent us a contract for all of their schools. So the process was finding people that would come in, teaching artists that we work with. And I think that what you guys have said is critical for us too, is that they need to have a sense that we care about the community. Because I live in South LA. I grew up in South Central, but our project has grown through the state. So we've done a lot of work in other spaces. But the fact is that we all have the same needs. You know, for us, in working in the schools, whether it's here or in Santa Ana or Riverside, it's always a need for connection and the need for understanding each other through how we feel when we see something. You know, and I am a filmmaker, I'm a producer, and I'm a writer, and everything has to do how do we connect with each other emotionally. And it's interesting because the first lesson that we teach is called Managing Your Emotions to all the kids, because it's really about understanding how you're feeling at the moment when you see something. And so part of us going into communities that don't know us is to make sure that we are there to just share, to listen to them. Why is my kid doing this film? What they need to be writing and reading, and we're like, that's exactly what we have to do before we do anything else. So helping them connect and understand, and also us being very clear that, we're talking about, everything is political. This is what I do know. And the whole idea is to make sure that the kids begin to understand how their voice is so important. And for us to just lay the foundation through film, which is what we do, for me as a writer, is like, here's a simple sentence. What do you do? What do you see? And it really starts helping, because sometimes we have the parents that stay just to see what's going to happen, because you got these people from Hollywood, that's a prescription coming in to, whatever they're going to do. And they come in and they watch and they see. Our goal is to make sure that your kid learns to read and write better, primarily because it's such a need. But the other part is they need to start understanding what they're saying to the world and how they're saying it, and the emotional impact that they have with everything that they choose with the words that they have. And that is powerful. Today was the first day at that space, and we had 30 kids that were very reticent. They're third grade to sixth grade, and at the end we had to cut them off because they all wanted to present because it was their voice. And that's something we experience. And what you're saying, finding people within the community, listening to them, paying attention to what they're doing is just transformational for a lot of our communities, because they haven't had that chance. And the beauty about, I will say that one of the most beautiful things about this space is that it allows the folks that come here to transform it as they need to. Because I've seen that with the students that we brought here also. And so that's something that for me is become a model of how we go, because we don't go and set up a set and all this other stuff. We work in the classrooms, because that's the most powerful space for kids to understand that what they do, it's going to impact the world, especially if they understand the value of them being in that classroom. So that what you guys are saying resonates with us, because that's exactly what we have to do. More importantly than anything, we have to listen. And then we have to be very transparent about why we're there. And sometimes, people have their issues with us, because one of the things that we've learned to do is that, the time of the teaching artists that we hire is valuable. So the district is going to have to pay for our services, and so part of that is also to make sure that they understand, the kids understand. It's really interesting when you say, when you tell them, you're getting paid for this? It's like, yes, that's how important you guys are. Oh, it's like, oh, really? So, I am glad to be here. I wanted to say something because I didn't want to, just have people give me a side eye, because I would do that. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
So thank you all for these important words. I think Swenja is going to put in a new card.
Time for our next topic, which is change. We would like to know, in which way did your project create change, be it emotional change, be it awareness change, be it behavioral change, or empowerment, as it was mentioned. So feel free to answer in your way.
Change is good. Change is going to happen, regardless if we like it or not. So I was really happy to hear what my daughter said about when she was describing this icebreaker card, how it changed her. So that was really good. How this program has changed me, I'm hoping for the better. That's the goal. And going back to what I previously said, a lot of the times we won't see the benefits, or we won't see the result of the work that we do. So we just have to trust that, a better change will happen. So that's kind of what I think about. But on also just wanted to mention that with the project that I did, it's not set in stone. It's continuing to evolve and change into other things, and I think that's appropriate because nothing can really stay the same because it becomes outdated. So in other words, it's like we can't stay on 4Gs. We have to move to 5Gs. We have to keep up with the times, right? We have to keep up with, the disparities that are out there in the world, So the services, the approach, things that I do, the engagement I do also needs to change. So I really appreciated the autonomy to not having to report to anybody and really having a budget to just really let my mind go off in its creative, imaginative side. And it's really just like inspired me and motivated me to keep it going, in other areas.
So change. I feel like the way some of the programs that we had at the Goethe-Institut really impacted youth, and staff as well. Because we had some staff members who have came out of prison and they've never been exposed to anything like this ever. So I feel like creating a kite, having the breakdancing, creating a tree with different cultures, and having an art exhibition, that a kid could call. That was me on the wall. I did that, right? Really puts or makes changes in a youth, right? Because they've never done things like this. They're getting out of the comfort zone. The only thing they know is go to school, come back, stay in my room, play video games. That's their everyday normal life, right? So I feel like the things that we experienced and we did in this space were phenomenal, right? It really made an impact on the kids that will forever cherish, and we're creating these memories, So I feel like change is very important.
I want to add to that. I just want to say that through all the years that I've been doing this work, I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of youth that have fallen through the cracks too and passed away. I've seen many of them go to prison. I've seen some of them also come out of prison, and so it's not a fun job, but it's needed because we plant the seeds, right? And sooner or later they will come seeking that change and trying to figure it out. And that's what happened to Freddie. When Freddie came to us, he didn't came out of free will. It was his mother that brought him over, right? And brought his brother over as well. And so he wasn't so happy, but he stayed, he participated, and then he fell, right? He fell, and then he came back years later, and he participated again, and this time he stayed, and being able to stay, gave us an opportunity for him to also, for us to really look at an opportunity of him participating now, not just as a participant, but also as a facilitator, right? And we didn't start him that way. We said, you know what, you're going to be our little administrator, answer calls, all right? And just take notes and messages. But we seen his engagement, right? It wasn't like he was there just for a little job. It was that he also felt that he had something to give. And when you're able to provide that to somebody, it's beautiful. because you're not only making a change, but you're transforming somebody. You're transforming yourself, right? I said, Freddie, I used to do the work that you used to do. I needed to replace me. And he's been able to do that, and the way that he gets along with the kids, the way that he goes out of his way to make sure that things are met, it's really what we all try for, right? And it's those moments that you see that it's being worthwhile, right? That it doesn't have to, you don't have to save all of them because it's impossible, right? But it's those that you have an impact. I had a kid that went through a program that is sitting on death row now, right? But he wrote to us, and he remembers us, and he's at peace, with himself, right? So nothing's lost. What I tell him is like, look, it don't matter if you're in the SHU program in isolation, in solitary confinement. You need to understand that there's still value to you. You are still valued, and you can help out so much. So they write letters, they write poetry. They sometimes they called, and we're in the meeting, and we put them on speaker, so the kids could hear them, and they tell, what they've done and how long they're facing in prison, right? So it's always about being there, right? It's about being present. It's about understanding that these kids might not understand it the first time. We get grants and they require you to be successful within a year. That's ridiculous. You can't change somebody when that's just a requirement, because you're talking about people coming in, that has been mistreated, and it took maybe 15 years for them to break, and they're broken, and how do you fix that in 1 year, right? So I just wanted to say, that I'm proud of Freddie, and when I see him, I see this change.
Yeah, I think a lot changed after this exhibit. I think because a lot of people came who had been at the Frida, and they looked at everything here in one go, and it was, oh, that's what we've been doing. And I mean, that happened to me. That's what we've been doing. Because when you're in something in the moment, you're doing this little thing right now, and you're connecting it to the next moment, but you don't have a long view. And I think just being able to see the history, I think it made everybody who works with the Frida really aware and sort of re-excited about why they were there. You had the instinct to go, but then seeing it all together was really powerful. And in this lovely venue also, and across time, it wasn't just like one day or one weekend, we got to visit. And so it got to be the Frida Fridays. And there's this whole crew of people like, okay, what are we doing on Friday? Well, we're going to the Frida thing on the Goethe on Friday. And people came 2 and 3 times, and people now remember it as an event. And so in that way, I think that was very powerful, that they might not have gotten just going to a show. Now we'll go to another show, but to see the whole idea of it. And you're very right about most of these programs. We've all worked in different types of community programs, and people do want a result. Or they'll say, well, what happened and what changed? You're like, well, I moved this little tiny thing from here to here, and no one saw it. And I'll tell friends are there, what have you been doing? Well, this. Oh, well, that doesn't, it's very easy to say that something doesn't matter. But that little thing moved another thing. It moved 20 other things that you'll never see. So it's very hard to quantify over time. You have to know that something moved. That's all. You moved one thing. It's very Asian, the long view, and it's like, don't get all impatient. Things are moving. You have to kind of, and there's the trust, you got to trust that something changed. I think.
So I'm riffing off of what Leanne said. I think also for us, like like we said, it was so dire at the beginning of the pandemic, like literally March 2020, everything shut down. The city, it's a city facility, they would not let us do anything. Like literally Ruben was in the dark all by himself. Um, and yet, being here at the Goethe, seeing our 30 posters that we put up, with our history, seeing the performances of our greatest hits, um, and also seeing over 400 actors that had come through our doors. We hung, these canvases of 400 photos of all the actors, and that's not even most of them. It was 400 actors that we put here, and just seeing their reaction when they would see themselves here, they would go, "Oh my God, yeah, that's photo from 20 years ago, but thank you." It just really just made us celebrate, which we hadn't seen. Just the celebration of surviving, of being here, of saying, "Yeah, man, we're just down the street. We're still here." We had a saying on our little board outside of the theater that we were going to return with wings again. And so that's what it felt like, seeing everything, seeing the performances, seeing the posters, seeing the photographs of our community photo lab class that we have. They were so proud. They were so proud of their work, So it was like it was an incredible experience in that sense that, it just reinforced the fact that we were artists and we will create regardless of pandemics or not. Theater's been around for thousands of years, and I hope to be around a couple of thousand years more. So,
I was just gonna say that when I started working on this kite in 2018, right? It was around creation. I was born in Guatemala. I've lived in LA since I was 9. So for me, it was more around like, well, not creating work that is like Guatemalan or like a nation or a flag or this notion of a country, right? But around like the people. So looking in traditions from like Maya, Quiche indigenous communities in Guatemala. So it was important to create art that reflected that. But that was also connected to my lived experience in LA as a displaced person, right? Both from indigenous communities, but also just like here in LA. And then just seeing all the changes in LA, like displaced people, like literally on the streets, or like displaced people who can no longer afford to live in LA, like immigrants and other communities, right? So for me, it was around like that change, that creation. And I feel like because, like at the park, right? Like for me, it was more important. It was very important to be like, well, right? It's like everyone does like Dia de los Muertos, and it's like cool. It's like, but the Guatemalans and indigenous people don't celebrate that, right? And it's like, who lives in this neighborhood? What are some of the issues that I wanted to talk about? And at least for me, right, like growing up as Leela was talking about earlier, right, like queer folks, it's like MacArthur Park. Like the park itself is like it's hella queer, it's hella trans. It's not a safe space for trans and queer people, but that's what lives in the neighborhood, right? Like MacArthur Park, Koreatown is hella black, right? Like people like to dismiss it and displace it, but it's like people going to live wherever they want to live, right? So for me, just growing up here as a queer person, like it was always about like, well, I'm gonna take up space and we're gonna reclaim space, and I think doing the kites at the park was more about like intentionally creating that space and keeping up that tradition and pushing back and making it accessible, right? As opposed to going through like the city and being like, let's do something cultural through their politics. For me, it was important about like doing it directly. And then this year, right, I was like, let's do a training, and then we're gonna do like language immersion, and it's gonna be like English, and it's gonna be fun. And then it was like, well, yes, right. Yeah, you were saying, right? Yes, it's important for children to learn English, especially if you're immigrant, sure, right? But it's like that's not necessarily what may be needed. So it became more of a language exchange, right? We have students who were from Guatemala who do not speak English, right? Like they're learning English, so they speak Spanish or other Maya languages. And for me, as I continue learning both Japanese and Maya, hopefully, Quiche, a little bit more in this upcoming year, it was important for me to be able to work directly through them, right? As opposed to being like, oh, teach me about your people, right? And where you come from. It was important about doing that exchange. So that's what the project changed a little bit this year.
Okay. So I think I have changed a lot ever since I joined Homies Unidos, because at the beginning of the year I was not in school or I wasn't working or nothing. I was just at home, and like in the middle of the year is when we met Frida, and he helped us a lot. Not only me, but my mom too. And I feel like now at home we have like so much more peace, I guess. And not only that, but I I think much differently now. I think that family is the most important thing. Everybody else is always gonna be there. Like the fun is not gonna finish, and nobody else is gonna do stuff for you other than yourself. And yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to share? Thank you so much for this. It's beautiful. If not, we go into our last little slide.
We've heard so much about credibility, continuity, being there, being present on a long term, and quite poetical terms like planting seeds, being proud. We are still here, the question of survival. But now we want to ask you for the key learnings that you would like to pass. Imagine that a young person comes to you and wants to engage in their community, and ask you for your key learnings, for the recommendations that you want to give this person on their way. Byron, you have the mic. Maybe you would like to start.
If someone wants to start, I can.
Hi, I didn't even introduce myself. My name's Joan. Well, I've been organizing since like 2014. So it's going to be like 8 years. But I mostly organize with women. And a lot of people, when they ask me like why do you organize with women, like it's just problems, it's just, but that's been the whole point too, that it's fine that there's just like the whole cattiness, like we were trying to prove that it wasn't about being catty. But I think what I learned, or what I would tell somebody who's younger, is that there's always going to be problems no matter what. Like a lot of people get out of organizing and they go into their own solo projects because they want to avoid problems. But it doesn't matter, like wherever you go, there's problems everywhere and anywhere, and even by yourself. So what I would tell a young person is just to keep working. And the rewards you see from community organizing are like so huge. Even if it's just like a little gathering of people, random people, like I think that's what I find like the most, like where I'm gonna meet up with people this Thursday, and it's gonna be funny because half of them I'm not even gonna know, and it's gonna be like a holiday celebration, and it's just keep meeting new people. Like it just doesn't get old. Like you just want to keep meeting more and more and more people. So I would just tell people, just keep going, and then just reflect and try not to feed off that bad energy, and just keep going. Like just keep going. It doesn't matter.
I've been organizing with Joan since 2014 in the bike community. So what I would tell anybody, and I have told people if they were interested in organizing, is just to give your love without any expectations. Are you doing it for the community, or are you doing it for you and your ego? The ego needs to be put aside. No one needs a savior. I have told people to go for it, to do it. Now we have social media, it's so easy to get something going. And if only 3 people show up, that's good. That's a success. Conflict is part of the process, and defending our mistakes is not something you want to do. Learning from our mistakes, because mistakes can be our greatest teachers. That's what I would tell people.
I would say build community. Build a community that's going to support you, that is going to be there, even in the toughest of times. We have an artistic home at the Frida. Leanne's been there a couple of years, so have I. We are, almost like founding members, not quite, but close. Just having that sense of connection, having an artistic home, if you're an artist, just the fact that you have somewhere to go, somewhere to where you can create, and you are allowed to fail. Even in failure, you find success because, as somebody mentioned, that's how you learn. And nobody's perfect. There will never be any perfection, thank goodness, because that's boring. But yeah, having community, having a home, having connection more than anything. I think that's what really makes you, a good artist, that you are connected, to your community, to yourself, to your art, etc.
I had the opportunity to work at Occidental College for a bit, and a woman who was my supervisor at the time, I always really appreciate her for sort of sharing with me the notion of contributing and like really naming reciprocity in the work. There's a lot of people have been throwing around like the word mutual aid a lot more these days since pandemic uprising times. And it's basically understanding that like in this engagement organizing world that like my liberation is tied to yours. And, you're not coming in as a savior, even with like volunteerism or, what in your grant applications you're talking about, who are you serving? Well, guess what? We're serving ourselves too. Like I'm healed through this work every day. Like straight up, I was not having a great day today. And I came into this space and it's like a whole other layer that gets unlocked, right? Of reminding me like why I do this work. I'd also want to offer, just enjoying the process. I can be a little bit of a type A, as some of you know. I'm very goal driven. I want things done. I want them done right. Yet, being right isn't always what's needed to keep a relationship in harmony. And also this work is so relational, right? So I'm not about people pleasing, but I want to move through conflict in a good way, because it is inevitable. We're all very passionate and creative and excited about what we do. Yet, how do you move through these moments where things get tough?
I'll share a little bit something about like one of the clients that we serve. Initially when he first came in, he was very in a very difficult time in his life. Everything from like cutting himself, suicidal tendencies. He felt like his mother didn't love him. I planted that seed over time. Like Alex was saying, right? The process doesn't take a year. It doesn't take 2 years. Everybody has a different journey, and it takes a while, for them to overcome whatever it is that they're going through. It was very difficult for me to gain his trust at first. Eventually later, a year, 2 years later, I started gaining his trust. Now he has a better relationship with his mother. I've been there through his ups and downs. His sister recently got arrested, and I was there. He called me. I was the first person to call. Like, hey, Freddie, I need some help. So I showed up, and that's how you build trust. Over time, right? Later on, he came at me with, I feel like I want to do this type of work. So what I did next was, I will think about him, like, hey, I'm going to this school. Do you want to tag along? And he'll tag along. and he'll see me interact with students and talk and communicate. And eventually I ended up giving him the mic. Hey, share something. Share about you. Share about your achievements, because your story is as important as mine. And at first it was very difficult for him to share his story. You know, and little by little he started talking and engaging and sharing, and now he has his own little group of kids that that he talks to and communicates, that are going through the same thing he was going through, which was depression and suicidal tendencies, right? And now if I have a client who is experiencing something like that, I'm able to refer that person to him, and just have that relationship over the phone, even though you're never going to see that person, but there is a such thing as a support system over the phone, right? And it's very important. So I see him, doing the work and in his own little way, as well as I see Katie, right? Katie, for a long time I've been working with her, and at first it was difficult for her to come and be consistent and attend and to get a hold of her, right? And little by little, just working with her, and now I ended up meeting her sister, Ashley, and Ashley was the same way, right? She'll hardly come, and just finding the needs that she needs, right? Which was work, money, activities, and now Ashley is stuck like glue, like everywhere Kitty goes, she wants to go, and that's awesome because she's planting that seed on her own sister, right? And maybe one day Kitty could also do the type of work that we're doing, right? And have an impact on other people, right?
Yeah, and just I guess off of also what Minerva was saying, that sometimes I think it's not the show. I mean, this is a very art specific thing, but people always go, it's about the show. It's kind of like, no, it's not about the show. It's about spending 3 months with people. And you find out that at the end of 3 months, you met all these amazing people. There's something for you there that relates to your life, or that you affect them, or somehow it's the excuse. Because, you couldn't really just say, well, can I just pick this group of 30 people and can we just show up every week? You kind of have to have a reason, and that's the show. So you get together and you do this thing. And while that's happening, that's where the friendships, the connections, the wonderful things people said that they forgot they said that completely changed your life. So it's the spaces between all those spaces. I think that's really the coolest stuff happens.
I was gonna say, beyond like telling young people to do it all, like literally, if you want to do that and this, do it. Like I started doing film projections, and then more like performance art, and there were a lot of artists that would be there were also performance artists that were also based out of LA that I'd be great, I had to learn from, and then I started writing drag elements into my performance, and then my friends started doing during COVID in the middle of the street performances, musical performance, and I had to learn how to play the piano, an instrument, right? So just trying different things, working with people, right? To be incorporating into your work. And yeah, similarly, whether it's organizing spaces or just art institutions, or just art spaces around, beyond trying things, right? Being able to, I completely lost my train of thought, which was okay. No, just around because it was the learning, trying it all, and the institutions. I'll come back. How about that? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it brings it back to you. But literally part of the reason why I fuck with Byron and Byron's artwork is because I love the rebel and the resistance part of all of it. I love that they don't ask for a permit to have a punk show on the corner of Sunset and where?
Echo Park.
Sunset and Echo Park on Sunset, but that's a main avenue. I love all of that. I love to make a cop's day worse. I love to piss them off. So that's why I would tell young people, don't ask for permission, just do it. And that's what you kind of started saying. Do it all. Try it all. Take it all in.
Yeah, and then kind of what Allegra was saying around the just the funding, right? Because then you create around institutions, right? Whether it's a nonprofit or this collective or this like ideology or this like artwork, right? It's for me, it's around like kind of what you're saying, right? Like spending the time with people, whether it's 3 months, whether it's a couple weeks, or in my case, like literally building a kite, right? It's like I don't want people to be like all of a sudden be building me as an institution or as an artist, or even if I were to be running an organization, right? It's about like what skills can you acquire so that you can then spread that into the world because you're creating, right? And then because again, not everyone is going to be in the leadership of X, Y, and Z organization. Not everyone is going to be like the one artist with the greatest show, right? Like but you can still create and continue doing that work. And then yeah, just pushing back, right? Who gets access to that, right? Whether like at least for myself, right? People are like, well, like you're organizing, but you're not really organizing like this way, right? Like if you want to talk about like trans and documented people or like folks in the carceral system, and like that's not really winnable, right? And then for me as an artist, people are like, well, yes, but you don't really have an MFA. So you're like, yes, but you're not framing your artwork in this way, and be like, well, it's still art. And then like right now I do like policy and connect with other organizations and other group in a different way, which again is like work that I created, I continues to do, because people are saying like everything is political and like art is organizing, creating art is organizing people, and organizing people is creating art. So I've been able to use those experiences to leverage them. And yeah, creating those opportunities for other people, especially younger people or newer people to art.
I just wanted to kind of add that there's in the line of work that we're doing, working with gangs and prison, and there is a dangerous side to this. There is a thin line you have to walk, and you have to have you have to be responsible for the actions that you take and how they can have a consequence. And anything, especially when it comes to that, when you're dealing with people that are breaking the law, may break the law, or had broken the law, right? There's a sense of criminalizing that population, and law enforcement never believed that those people could change, right? And in doing so, you're that rebel, right? You're going against the system, when you're trying to keep these folks away from the hands of the police, right? When you're trying to keep the hands out of the other gang members that need recruitment, right? When you're trying to save these kids from their own selves, right, or harming others. So I tend to with folks that come to me that want to do this work, for the most part, they have been individuals that have lived that life, right? So they have lived experience, which it makes it easier for me to talk a language that they'll understand. But I've also had people that have not, or don't understand, or they find that this is something that's cool, right? That they're going to meet gang members, right? And work with gang members, and, all this glamorizing, right? That happens of individuals in gangs, right? And the movies and whatnot. And I tell them that they should think about it. I tell them the steps, and not to say that nobody can, except a person that's lived the experience, but understand that that there are different skill sets, right? That there are things that people could bring, even though they might not have been in that life, and they can help a certain way, maybe not other ways, right? So it's always, I never turn people away unless I truly see that they're just coming with all bad intentions, right? But for the most part, we have support systems from all kinds, even including folks that never had connections with this population. So it's like, understanding what level of skill sets you might have into whatever field you want to go into, right? Whether it's theater or gang intervention or school settings, right? I mean, just for the schools alone, we've been trying to get an MOU. It's a headache with LAUSD, right? And now we got to do all this background check. And I said, well, all my guys are lived experience. They all have fucking criminal records. It's like, how am I get them into the school, right? But they're the ones that can really make a change, right? So, I mean, all of those things, it's our issues that we need to take into consideration.
I think that, thinking about the kids that we work with, we have this great opportunity because we do start with the kids at a really young age. We're just working with third graders. And the challenge is that for us that, I grew up in South LA, it wasn't as bad as it's in the movies. So I just want to tell you that. So but it is challenging. The stress level in places like that is very high. That's what people don't understand. It isn't about someone being violent. It's just that, your level of give is very low. Family doesn't have enough money. Family is looking for a way to find a way for your kid to go somewhere so they can figure things out. A lot of elements. And one of the things that we're able to do in the schools, we've been able to get those MOUs, and believe me, you're right, they're so challenging, and working with multiple school districts, we've had to do that over and over, right? And when folks work with us, we have the same conversations with them that we have with the kids, is that at the end of the day, there's certain practicalities that you have to be clear about. For us is that the change that I've seen, going really quickly to that, is that I've learned that one of the most important assets that I have is that I'm very coachable. I'm very open to people giving me guidance. But I also know my skill set very clearly. And so when we talk to the students and we talk to kids, and some of them are in continuation schools, kids that have come out of juvenile hall or are clearly on their way there. The whole understanding that you need to know what you're good at and what is it that you are able to build on. So we have them take a look at themselves, just like I have the filmmakers that work with us. We have 25 filmmakers that, they're all well studied. They're coming out of USC, they're coming out of NYU, they're places that I couldn't get into, but the whole idea is that they have to take a look at themselves when you approach a young person or even a young adult, which is someone 18 or maybe in college. What are you willing to learn from them? Just because, I'm a 55-year-old man. I grew up in South LA. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I didn't speak the language when I came in. I spent 10 years in the military. That's really bad for a lot of progressive liberals to know, so I don't say it as much. I was an intelligence officer. That's even worse. So the whole capacity that I built was on what I knew I needed to do, and I was able to intentionally change spaces that were really hard for people to change. So one of the things that we work with the kids is like, I need to know how you know what you're competent at. And kids who have gone through stuff, once they figure that out, they feel more confident. So, these are hard conversations that in the community that I grew up in South LA, it was very, it wasn't, it wasn't African Americans and Latino. It was black and white and black and brown. Because, the 3 white kids that lived in that neighborhood, we just talked to them like we talked to each other because that's all we knew. And the conversation was very clear about we're friends and that's it. And all of the nuances that we built as time goes by is because nobody's given them any clarity. So their emotions take over. So that's another part that we talk to the kids about. You need to know how you feel about things when you see them. These are, one of the things that I will say, I'll go back to my experience, why I ran over here, because these are things that I don't see. There's community organizations in my environment. I don't see them until I come to a place like this. So I tell the kids also, you have to go be intentional about the extra work because this is hard work. This is challenging work. And as artists, for me, I'm in a really weird space. Myself and my business partner, we co-founded both a foundation and a private company so we could protect it. And at the same time, it means that we have to be open to folks that might want to come into the schools that we've been able to come into, and because of the foundation that we've been able to do, we are being pulled into the schools, but we don't have the capacity that someone like your organization has. And that's really important for us to recognize.
I know, I'm like,
Here.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all of you. I think that all these kind of abstract notions that we shared with you, I think one thing is key to create trust, to create change, to create encounters and learnings. It's always important to tell stories and to listen to each other and to listen to each other's stories. And that's why I want to thank all of you for sharing your stories, which were so impressive and inspiring. Thank you.
I need the battery. Okay, I think we need to end because we're down to one microphone. That's a sign. Yeah, I also really want to thank you all for coming here today, for taking the time, for sharing the space, for sharing your stories, and from our side, from the Goethe-Institut and the Thomas Mann House together. I really want to thank you also for trusting us to come into this space and doing your work with us, because I know and we know, Dan and I know, that this is not a given, that people from a community come and share their work with us, because we are often considered as white, as a white organization, and even though I'm German Vietnamese, I know that I work for a white organization. So thank you very much for trusting us to come in here, because I'm gonna riff off your words. Encountering you has really changed us, and in an amazing way. And we learned so much from you over the course of the last year about this community, about your work, and it's been just an amazing journey for us. So thank you very much. And I want to also give a shout out, because I loved how you spoke to Frida and then Frida spoke about you. I thought it was so beautiful. Yes. So I want to thank Pauletta because of what you said earlier about how you had to Google that institute shit. I thought it was great. And how, in the end, what made you actually put in a proposal was that you came in here and you saw Joel, and then you saw Allegra. And these two people were also a key for me. So I met Joel through a project. He was referred to us, and he started working with us through a project called Shaping the Past about monuments. And when I told him that we are looking at a space in this area and that we wanted to connect particularly also to communities and new audiences, that for us are LA, because our work only makes sense if we connect to the communities around us, and LA is 50% Latinx, and it's African American, it's Asian American. And then he said, if you want to work at MacArthur Park, you have to know Allegra. So he connected me to Allegra and Levitt. And I really want to thank you, because I think your work is outstanding. What you have created with, I know, but I'm talking about you right now. Take it. I think what you have created with Levitt and this Community Advisory Council when I came in there, I didn't know what to expect. I thought, oh, they're just going to talk about how they're going to do their summer concerts. And then I realized really fast that it was so much more than that, what you have created, this space of sharing and understanding of people in the community. And I want to thank you for inviting us into that space and being able to listen and being able to connect to the community, because Dan and I, we couldn't have never created this work without your space and connecting to the community. So thank you so much. I know you always say it's a shared space, but I want to give props to you because I think you're amazing. So if you have a few more minutes, behind this giant ecstasy pill, as you have recognized by now, we're opening this exhibition on Friday. It's called Techno Worlds. And this is one of the art objects. So behind it, we have a little bit of water and German Christmas cookies. So this is what we eat for Christmas, is these particular cookies. They remind me of my childhood. So please take a cookie or take cookies for your friends or your family with you. And thanks again for coming.